Colorado for us, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the August Transportation Lean Forum. This is Shay Riley speaking. I will be your host for this webinar today. So just as a quick reminder, you guys all should have been muted upon entry, but in case you weren't, please go ahead and double check that. We do have people on this side going ahead and muting people if you don't realize that your microphone is on, so don't worry about that. And at the end of the presentations, we normally have a couple of minutes for some questions directly for the presenter, and then at the end of the whole webinar, we have an open forum. So at those times, if you would like to ask a question, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can also send it in the chat pane. We do have someone monitoring that. If you have any technology challenges, like any difficulties with using Zoom, go ahead and contact Host Wei. He's in the room and he is going to be the guru for that today. You can chat him and his username will be TLF_tech. Or if you are having difficulties with your chat, you can go ahead and email him as well. And just a quick thank you to all the people tuning in today. This is a recent little screen grab of all the different locations where we have people tuning in regularly to our webinars. And so we just wanted to say thank you. You know, this whole thing would be pretty pointless if you guys weren't watching. So thanks for tuning in. And a quick little agenda of what's going on today. Like I said, I'm Shay Riley. I'm going to be your host. And then we are going to have two presentations and three separate presenters. For our first presentation, Allison Black is going to be presenting from the Florida Department of Transportation. And then after that, it's going to be Lindsay and Shane from the Nebraska Department of Transportation. And at the end, we're going to have a little bit of time for an open forum to just talk about whatever you'd like and ask any kind of questions. And so I'm going to go ahead and hand off to Allison if you want to go ahead and request control.
All right, I think I'm good to go.
Yeah, we can hear you good.
Okay, good. So my name is Allison Black. Thanks for the introduction, Shelly. I'm from the Florida Department of Transportation. And today I'm just going to do a quick presentation on our organizational change management efforts. This is something at the Florida Department of Transportation that we've done pieces and parts of for a very long time. And we've figured out that when we do pieces and parts, it's helpful, but without a formal framework to follow, some of the things that could easily be done that we should be doing to prepare our organizations for change are kind of being dropped. And so without that formal framework, we don't have all of the boxes to check. Things aren't on the forefront of our minds. And are not yet anyway. So our effort with organizational change management at DOT here in Florida is to formalize organizational change management and further support our technology projects in preparing the agency for readiness. So just a quick overview of what organizational change management is. Like I said, pieces and parts are probably really familiar to a lot of people, but the concept of having a framework around it is still kind of new. So it's a proactive, formalized process that addresses the people, process, and technology impacts of change and adequately prepares our department for those changes. It's really focusing on the targeted, appropriate involvement from our stakeholders, enables buy-in and ownership, and ensures the business is prepared to own and accept the change organizationally, behaviorally, functionally, technically, and really with all of that, we set up an environment that promotes overall sustainability of change that our projects bring. And these types of projects can range anywhere between how we manage our Active Directory to how we manage our $10 billion work program, and I mean, right down to how we characterize and capture our roadway characteristics of signage or reflectors on the road, those types of things. So our technology is really embedded in everything that we do here. Organizational change management further contributes to the department's reputation as a leader in the transportation industry, along with many of our transportation operations functions and infrastructure needs. So that's kind of the breadth of the projects I just kind of talked about. We focus more on just the informational change or informational technology needs, and we really focus on operational technology needs as well. So why did we start doing organizational change management formally at FDOT? I talked about that a little bit already, but we realized all of the opportunities that we were missing to better prepare our staff for changes that our technology brings. And it's ever evolving. It's almost a timing problem that we have. Just when we're caught up with technology, something new comes out and we're forced to change again. So we were missing a lot of opportunity to prepare our staff for that. And so again, it embraces the changes that are brought about with our technology projects. It ensures effective business engagement, readiness, and adoption. It increases efficiency with the department's business and project management process. And also, Governor DeSantis here in Florida is really about embracing technology and helping and figuring out ways that it can help us do our business better. And so it really promotes the priorities to strengthen safety for all modes of transportation, offer congestion relief, and incorporate the latest technologies into our infrastructure. Oh, I went too fast. Bear with me one second. So our approach here at DOT is we already recognize how important it is to formally support these types of initiatives and projects in which we're investing. I'm working on a legislative budget request now to get some more OCM support. And I believe the amount of technology projects that we're investing in right now, just within one division of our organization, is at about $19 million. So we absolutely want to support that investment. And we've quickly learned that our OCM efforts are not based on a one-size-fits-all solution. It's really based on the complexity of the projects that we're working on, the impacts of those projects. And so while we're trying to formalize our efforts, we still want it to be somewhat flexible so that when appropriate, we can kind of deviate from that. An OCM oversight and work tasks, activities, and products must be envisioned and conducted in a manner that makes sense to us. There's a lot of off-the-shelf strategies and methodologies when it comes to organizational change management, and we've tried some of those before, but I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. We all know that in state government, we do things a lot different than how folks do it in the private sector. So we're trying to tailor it to our culture, making sure it supports our governor's prioritization of technology. And also, we have state technology requirements that are overseen by the Division of State Technology, and we want to make sure that those requirements are also addressed in our approach. And these are some of the things that fall under the organizational change management umbrella. It's a change in the vision and strategy. It's focusing on stakeholder inventory and analysis, communications, change impact assessment, and figuring out mitigation plans for those impacts, training, delivery, planning and delivery, and then also making sure that we're sustaining the change and focusing on performance and operational measurements. And really, what this enables the department to do is plan, implement, and adopt change in the most efficient way possible. Some of the risks that we face without a formal organizational change management, and not just the Florida Department of Transportation, we as an industry face, is that if we have here at the department approximately 5,500 full-time staff and 8,800 contract staff, and our technology projects either impact the transportation services or system that we provide. And so there are the potential that we could impact every single one of those employees or even just a small subset of those employees. But at the same time, we want to make sure everybody is prepared and ready to adopt change. And statistics indicate, this is a study done by EY Client Experience, Gartner, and Forrester, that 75% of our projects that we undertake fall short of meeting 100% of our project objectives due to the lack of OCM. So when I tell you that one of our divisions invests $19 million of our base budget in technology projects, if we're not getting 100% of the value of that, that's a problem, right? We want to make sure that we're protecting that investment. And that kind of goes to the third bullet point of we're risking not getting 100% of the value of our dollars invested. And so if we can put a framework in place that helps us do a little bit better than 75% of our projects, meeting all of our target objectives, that's absolutely worth the investment. Some of the adverse impacts that result in the 75% of the projects not meeting their full objectives are people just not understanding the vision or the need or the benefits of a project or an initiative. And without that understanding, you limit the amount of buy-in and support that you need from some of your key sponsors, whether it be executive leadership or the folks that are boots on the ground that you need buy-in from to help you do better and really adopt and sustain the change. And then you've got poorly aligned business outcomes and project management processes. If you don't understand the full impacts of the change, how are you supposed to understand what the business outcome should be? A lot of our projects have, we do really well at project management, and I'm sure most of us do. And we can, let's just give an example. We can churn out an application that we need to track our roadway characteristics. We can do that, but if we've got 600 people that have to use that system and they don't know how to use it, that's a problem. And if we need an additional 6 months to train those people, that needs to be built into that project timeline. And so without OCM, we underestimate the time and complexity required to ensure we've got the right people engaged, that they're ready, and that they're prepared to adopt a change. And then leading into the next one that kind of speaks to it is that if it really, the department lacks in preparedness if people aren't aware of changes to their duties, responsibilities, their requirements, things like that. We want to make sure that's on the forefront. And then failure to monitor and ensure full adoption of change can be a problem. We have a couple projects going on right now with our financial management processes, and right now we're very reliable on manual entry, a lot of Excel budget sheets, things like that. And so what we want to do is whenever we bring process efficiencies and we have a system that can manage that for us, we want to make sure that people are aware of and know how to use it so they're not going back to the old ways of how they used to do their work. And another key thing here is limiting, it limits the understanding and management of competing priorities. And one of the things that our team is tasked with is looking at the dependencies or interfaces between projects that are going on in the department. So we try not to look at OCM in a silo per project. We want to make sure that we have that big bird's eye view picture of things that are going on. So that management is aware of competing priorities and how decisions are made for one project could impact another project. So these are just some specific risks that can lead into the reason why 75% of our projects can fall short of meeting 100% of our objectives. And so with that, we would, if we didn't have this in place and we weren't working towards a framework, we would remain in a reactive state when it comes to organizational readiness. Right now, because we've only been doing this about a year and a half, right now and prior to this point, we weren't really concerned with technology breaks when we implemented new things. It was more, we were waiting on the other shoe to drop to see who didn't know about it. And so we were very much in a reactive state. And it severely limits us from efficiently performing our core functions and supporting the governor's priority. And if the organization isn't engaged in, ready for, or adopting change that technology brings to the department and our ever-evolving transportation system, our ability to accomplish our mission is at risk as well. And so onto the more positive things. We've heard about the risks, right? And so some of the more positive things that a formalized OCM program can bring is aligning our leaders on what we're working towards and our goals. And that puts them in a position where they can provide visible sponsorship throughout the life cycle of a transformation. It engages our stakeholders who maintain accountability and move from awareness to readiness to adoption by these transformational changes and the needs that we have. It really engages the people. Like I said, those are the boots on the ground people that really make the change possible. It prepares our employees to understand new roles and responsibilities, and it identifies spots in our organizational structure and processes that we might need to change from current state to future state to sustain change. It's not just about getting the people ready. It's about looking at our processes, our policies, our procedures from a big organizational perspective to make sure that as an entity, we're ready to embrace the change that our technology projects are bringing. OCM efforts ensure that those who are responsible for performing the day-to-day functions of staff's roles and responsibility, these are the boots on the ground people, and maintaining our data and system and safeguarding the state of Florida transportation system are aware, prepared for, and accepting of changes our technology projects bring to our industry. And so from our team perspective, right now, I'm a team of 3, and we've engaged with Ernst & Young as a consulting opportunity to help us determine what works best for the Florida Department of Transportation. And so in 2018, that's when we really started our organizational change management efforts at DOT. And kind of part 1 of that was identifying all the technology projects that were going on. We did not have a single repository for that. And so we've got a handle on that. We understand how many projects that we have going on within our purview that we need to provide OCM support for. And then started building a foundation for our long-term goals, knowing what fell within our perspective and what we needed to support allowed us to put a plan together to do so. And so now this year, we've really started launching project support for those projects. I believe we are at right now 42 active technology projects. And again, these range, like I said, from maybe a couple $100,000 to our largest one is right now $112 million project that we're supporting. And so we've activated support for those high and medium complexity type technology projects right now. And we've started to work on building OCM awareness throughout the department. And so our next step for next year is standardizing tools and resources and things like that to allow the project teams to kind of take on some of the OCM responsibilities themselves. Like I said, I'm a team of 2, and then I've got 5 consultants that are working with me on a 3-year contract. And at some point, they're kind of teaching us how to fish. We're going to have to learn to fish, and then we're going to have to fish. And so that's really what 2020 is about, is developing a progression towards the internal OCM capacity at the department. So with that kind of concludes my presentation of what we're doing in terms of organizational change management at Florida DOT. So Shirley, did you want to try to do questions now, or did you want to hold off until the end?
Yeah, thank you so much, by the way, for that presentation. That was great. But if you do have a couple of minutes to have people submit some questions. Yeah, that would be awesome. So anyone who's listening, if you do have a question for Allison, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can also send the question through the chat pane. And we have Jean here who will go ahead and read your question out for you.
Okay.
All right, so we do have one in the chat pane. It says, what is the expertise of the consultants that you hired?
So Ernst & Young, they actually do a lot more than just organizational change management. They're highly recognized for their IVMB capacity as well, but they have basically a division that's dedicated to what they call people advisory services. And that's really the interpersonal side of, I guess you could say, kind of state government. They work a lot in state government. They do some stuff with some private practices too, but within their people advisory services component, they have teams that are focused solely on organizational change management. And one of the leads that I'm working with, he's been doing it almost 25 years. He actually worked with Deloitte prior to that on organizational change management. And so I've been very pleased with their patience with us and learning what we're trying to do here and helping us figure out a way that it makes sense to us. They are very open to hearing our constructive feedback and not trying to force a single product kind of towards us. And so I've been very pleased with them so far. We've engaged with them in this effort, and then some of them are larger projects. We've actually engaged with them with a separate team to help us focus full time on some organizational change management there. And if you'd like, I can provide some contact information for the team that I'm working with if you're interested in reaching out.
And that would be great. We should, we can always include that we can put that on the Lean Interchange website too, just so people have that for reference.
Yep.
All right, we have another one from Vicky. It says, do your change management plans include a communication plan?
Yes, so that is one of the, what we call the 10 greatest hits. Communication, not just the plan, but the communication strategy, the plan, and then also the communications activity is part of the organizational change management plan.
Great. We have another one. It says, to whom does the OCM team report and why?
Okay, so we have, I guess what you could say, 4 divisions within the Florida Department of Transportation. We have our finance and administration, we have engineering and operations, we have strategic development, and actually we used to be under strategic development, but just recently with the governor's prioritization on technology, we got pulled out from underneath strategic development, and we're now our own division, and we're called Transportation Technology. And the Organizational Change Management Office reports under Transportation Technology. Should we be doing this at an enterprise level for all of those divisions? Yes. Our Chief Technology Officer, though, is the one that's really, really invested in organizational change management efforts, sees the value of it, sees the need for it for the amount of money that we invest in these types of projects. So in a sense, we're kind of like a pilot for the rest of the organization. We want to gain some traction, have some success stories and things like that, so that at some point we have kind of the reputation that we can leverage to get us at the enterprise level.
Great, we've got 2 more. The first one is, what methodology did you employ to identify and capture all active tech projects, and how are they defined?
So we have a couple different methods in which we did this. We have a portfolio management tracking system that our information technology office manages, and that is kind of, in a sense, like where we track our billable hours. So all of our hours that are spent on a project are tied to a project within that portfolio management system. So we were actually able to pull one report from there. Another thing that we've employed is our technology proposal process. We found that we had a lot of shadow technology projects going on within the department, and that's not a really great investment of our dollars. We want to make sure that we're being strategic in the way we're developing technology at the department. And so that is basically a repository in which any type of technology request must go through to be considered for funding. And then, honestly, we had to do some surveys, we had to do some word of mouth, things like that to really get a grasp on what was going on within the department. So I don't have a specific methodology. It was just using every resource we had available that we knew had some sort of interaction with projects to capture those.
Great, and our last one in the chat pane is, a major part of the OCM process that distinguishes it from project management is putting people front and center. How are you typically helping people to develop awareness and readiness for change?
So this is absolutely true statement. It's putting the people front and center versus the project or the application or the technology. And in a world of engineers, that can be very difficult. And I'm preaching to the choir here. engineers typically are very black and white in what they see and when they see the value and stuff. Like, they need a product. They want to see the, you know, the instant gratification and the instant benefit of doing something. And the biggest key with organizational change management is understanding it's a process and not a product. And typically throughout the organizational change management process, you don't see the immediate benefits. It's typically right before go live and after go live that you think, my goodness, I'm glad we did all of that, right? I tease my counterpart, the chief information officer here at the department. I'm like, nobody realized they need OIT until their email doesn't work or until they can't log into something. And so I think OCM right now is one of those things we didn't realize that we needed it, and to what extent until we didn't have it. And so we've got to bring that to the forefront of people's attention here and make it second nature to them, to start thinking about the people and the readiness of the organization. And this ties to one of our strategic goals. Is step one of this is making people aware that this is a problem. This is an obstacle that we have to overcome, and we all have to be a part of it. So with creating that awareness, I talked about the 10 greatest hits of organizational change management, which some are included in this presentation, like the communications plan, training, stakeholder inventory and analysis, that sort of stuff. And what we've started doing is we have these knowledge transfer sessions. We first have them with our executive leadership and then with their direct reports, and then we open it up for the organization to join. And so we have 3 knowledge transfer opportunities for each one of those topics. We started with Organizational Change Management 101, which is a little bit more in depth than what we went through today, but that was just creating the what is organizational change management so we can dive in deeper. And now we're taking that same approach with those knowledge transfer sessions and taking a deeper dive into each one of those 10 greatest hits. And after we do those 3 knowledge transfer sessions, we take all the feedback, all the stuff that we did, and we turn it into a multimedia informational resource so that it's available on demand so people can refer back to it, so they're not having to travel or log into a WebEx or whatever it may be. We're essentially turning it into a training, if you will. And then because we're still not at that enterprise level, we're still within just the transportation technology purview right now. Once these are all completed, this then becomes a training requirement for all transportation technology staff and anyone who requests a technology project. And so that's how we're trying to create the awareness. And we're hoping with that awareness, and again, with the resources I spoke about, trying to develop over the next couple years and trying to build that capacity is where we hope to see the impact in terms of readiness.
Awesome.
And we just finished the actual production of our OCM 101 video, and we have right now in the works our case for change, our communications planning, and our stakeholder identification and analysis. But I can share the OCM 101 video that we've completed if anyone's interested.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, if I know you do have to go to another meeting, but just so everyone knows, at the last slide, if you do have additional questions for Allison, you can go ahead and send those to her or give her a call. She said she's totally open to that. So, but yeah, thank you so much for presenting.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. And I'm sorry to miss the following presentations, but I do have to run.
Oh, no, yeah, you're fine.
All right, thanks. Y'all have a nice day.
Thanks, you too. All right, Lindsay, do you remember how to request control?
I do.
Awesome. If you want to go ahead and do that.
All right. Well, good morning. My name is Lindsay Soshek. As Shay said, I'm with the Nebraska Department of Transportation. I currently lead the team of Lean Six Sigma members. We have 3 currently on my team. Alongside of me this morning is my colleague Shane Doffenbach. He is a process improvement coordinator here at NDOT. Thanks to the Colorado DOT for coordinating this lean effort today. Nebraska is definitely excited to be part of this community. Today, I'm going to provide you guys with an overview of what's going on here at the state of Nebraska around Lean Six Sigma. The governor came on board about 4.5 years ago, and one of his top priorities was making government more efficient and effective and customer focused. And so one of our approaches is using Lean Six Sigma. Shane will also be giving you a real in-house process improvement project he has completed just a few short months ago, and what those results were. All right. Whoop. So Nebraska is made up of 4 solid pillars. I'll dive a little bit deeper into each one of these here in a minute, but our first focus is around the BELT certification system, Kaizen events. We try to bring high energy to our teams to solve problems quickly. And then we've tried to install daily huddles using a format called the QDIP process. And again, I'll dive deeper here in a minute. And then lastly, for our projects, we're using the DMAIC methodology. Sorry, it's going a little quick. Can we go back into that? Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Here, I'm going to go ahead and take control for a second, and you're just going to have to click again to regain it. But,
okay.
And then if you want, when you click, the first time you'll regain control, but then click again to keep going forward in the presentation.
All right. So as I said, our BELT system, we use a BELT system to help Lean Six Sigma team members understand their responsibilities and coordinate their work efforts. To understand what makes Lean Six Sigma work together, it's important to be acclimated with our system to help drive those results. And so you'll see on the screen, we've got quite a few trainings that we send our team members through. Everybody that onboards with the state is required to go through White Belt. White Belt is providing value to the customer, input to process improvement projects. The White Belts also play an important role in sustaining the gains from our continuous process improvement projects, and they're heavily involved in the daily huddles. We then have Yellow Belts. Those are focused, our training's really focused at middle level managers. They become the experts and resources to support the continuous process improvement efforts within their business area. We've just recently added a training lean leader, and this is focused to our high performers, people that are really interested in LSS and want to learn more and gain a few more tools. They're generally administrators, managers, and supervisors, but it's not limited. If we have frontline staff that are interested, we definitely welcome them to the training. This is focused more on the basics of lean. They make daily improvements to their work areas through the lean tools, and again, this can be included in their daily huddles using the QDIP board that I'll talk more about. Our green belts are process improvement coordinators. As I mentioned, Shane's here with me today. These team members coordinate and facilitate all the aspects of our process improvement projects and events. They're actively engaging with management and communicating with sponsors what's going on with the improvement. They provide support to the agency on the daily huddles and LSS tools and methods, and they also provide that coaching and support to our white and yellow belts. We've got the executive green belt. This is targeted to our leadership team members. They don't really gain a whole lot of expertise in what the green belts do, but it gives them familiarity with what the green belts are working on. So they're not proficient as a green belt would be. Their focus is really on executive decisions to help identify future projects. Black belts, they're those high-performing green belts that are ready to take on more complex projects. They've got a proven track record. They're efficient in project management, team development, and they specifically know the Lean Six Sigma methodology. And then we have a Master of Black Belt. We have one in the state. That's usually the director of our Center of Operational Excellence, and he's kind of the expert in all aspects, managing projects, resources, and conducting the trainings for the state. So then our second pillar is the Kaizen events that I talked about. Kaizen events typically last 3 to 5 days. The goal of the Kaizen is to map out the identified processes, identify the value add and non-value add of those steps, and to map out a new and improved streamlined process. At the end of the event, the goal is really to have a project action plan to launch that improvement pretty quickly after we go through the Kaizen. This is best used when the process is needing improvement and is simple to medium complexity. It's also useful when there is a need for rapid and quick change. And also, the agency just needs some revitalization. We need some high energy, and we need team members to really quickly engage and get in a room and knock out the problem that we're trying to solve. The third item, the DMAIC methodology. This approach is very versatile. The timeframes vary. We use DMAIC more when we have a long, lengthy project. It could take 3 to 6 months. We'll use more of the DMAIC approach. Projects can be a mixture of meeting lengths and days and are not locked into a specific time frame. Green belts expiring to be black belts need to be 100% comfortable with these large-scale projects. And now I'm going to hand it over to Shane. He's going to walk you through a project that he just went through a couple months ago. So we're just going to transition here.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. So a couple months ago, I was involved in the right-of-way department looking at their Occupy right-of-way permitting process. And I'm just going to give you a very abridged and abbreviated walkthrough as we go through this. One of the first things that we will do, I guess I can break down our projects into 3 basic areas. There's a front end, there's the actual event, kind of the middle, and then there's a back end. And there's a lot of work on the front and the back that isn't really seen. But we will, as process improvement coordinators, work with sponsors, work with division heads or process owners, and figure out where the pain points are. We like to create an official charter for each project, and in that charter, it gives us an idea of what the scope is. It gives us an idea of what's inbounds and out of bounds. It reflects the work that was done in doing stakeholder interviews, in looking at what the whys are to this project. Why are we doing this? What are the pain points involved? What is the impact on the taxpayers? At the same time, we also conduct voice of the customer interviews because we want to know what are the goals. If we take this on as a project, this process, what are the goals that we want to shoot for? And so we will actually for each project, do a voice of the customer interview. And we try to balance that out with internal customers as well as external customers. We want to talk to people that are inside DOT, and if we can, even talk to people that this process impacts that are outside DOT. So we try to do a 50-50% so that we can get a good sense of what the customer wants, and from that we will develop critical customer requirements, and those become our goals. And that could be something like reducing the lead time, or improving communication, or taking this out or that out. But there's specific things that we shoot for goals. We also, on the front end, will develop a team, and that team, again, we're looking for a balance of internal. We're looking for a balance of up and downstream, as far as the process, who's up and downstream of that process. And we're also looking for externals. Who are those people that we can have on board that can disrupt the typical thought, that can kind of poke at and question how things are, so that when we're looking at this process, we have these experts, but we also have people on the outside that go, well, why are you doing it this way? So it's a great balance, I have found. Before we actually kick it off, we usually do data collection so that we have some specific time data to know what's going on coming into the Kaizen event. And then in that Kaizen event, we use a lot of visual management, and we use a lot of sticky notes and a lot of white paper to create a process map. We want every step that's along the way so that we can identify problem areas, so we can identify reworks, we can identify weights and wastes. We want to also identify value add steps according to what the customer feels like would be a value add. So that we can come up with, as you see here on the screen, kind of what we call the equations. This gives us an idea that tells the story of what's going on. From this, we can understand that while this process may not seem to take a long time, what's going on between that 19 days that it typically takes and the 8 hours of process time? If it only takes 8 hours, what's with that whole 19-day? This tells the story so the team's able to visualize it and then go from day one, which is all about the current state, and step into day two, which is what does better look like? So we'll spend time brainstorming solutions as well as improvements. And we use a technique you may be familiar with called clean sheet redesign, where we have them do very similar to what they did with the current state process map, but this time they're just taking those value add steps and bringing those into a clean sheet and saying, how can we get this process done? How can we provide this service or this product in a totally new way, as long as we have these value add steps? And it gives us the opportunity, ability to come up with a brand new process, focusing on specific future improvements. There's, whether it be reducing unnecessary handoffs, changing certain things, removing certain things, changing policies, trying to get things out of the way that are no longer useful or add value to the process. And then that will also in turn give us a new future. And so we'll be able to compare, hey, what does the new process look like as opposed to the old process? What are how many steps were we able to remove, and handoffs, delays, value adds, lead time? How is this any better? My team will be able to answer those questions at the end of day two. And then going into day three, we will go, okay, what do we need to set in place? What kind of controls do we need to set in place to make sure this is a success? Going into the pilot and the wide scale, what do we need to do if we were to put these new steps out into the wild? What do we need to do to make sure that they work, and what do we have in place? How are we going to be able to do that? And then going from there is that third day of looking at that also gives us opportunity to report out to our leadership, so that they can know the results. The team is able to present to the team that this is what we did, this is what it looks like, this is what the savings is in regards to, how many hours did we save? What's our, what's the projected ROI? Because one of the great things that I like about our methodology is we want to have legitimate savings involved in this. We want to be able to collect and to know this data. That gives us an idea of that Kaizen event on the back end. Then what that simply looks like is the pilot. How are we going to run this pilot, collect the data, be able to tweak that, and then move into wide scale? Because my job as a process improvement coordinator is to follow each project, each new thing that we've done, to be able to follow that for a year, collecting data, monitoring the successes that we have, so that we can kind of make sure that this survives. So there's many different action steps that we put in as we're going along, creating the SOP so that when people transition from the process owner or retire, that someone else can step in and know exactly what's happening. We like to be able to communicate the data and changes to the leadership. Another thing that our governor will do is he will take stories like this and he'll be able to present these. He becomes the mouthpiece for the improvements that the government is doing as he presents these in talking points. He presents these to the public, and so it's a great kind of full circle methodology that we have, and I think that's about what's going to be good for it.
All right. So in 2019, here is a list of projects that we have been working on at NDOT. I'm not going to go through each project, but I would let you guys know that if you have questions or would like to learn more about the improvements, reach out to Shane or I, and we can direct you to the Greenbelt Process Improvement Coordinator that worked on that project, and they can give you more specifics on what the results were and how they went about that. All right, so jumping into the last pillar that was on our first slides, daily huddles. What does daily huddles mean? Daily huddles are our basic stepping stone for the Nebraska culture. They serve as a tool for basic operational management. Using daily huddles helps not only identify where you're at with your metrics on a daily basis, but it's also helping us identify where those project opportunities may be. It's finding ways to improve our business at the most local level, if you will. So as I mentioned, the yellow belts are our middle level managers. They're working with the white belts, who are the frontline staff, to have those daily conversations. And so at the local level, they're able to find where the possible pain points are or where the root cause may be. Green belts help support yellow belts by helping align their SMART goals, which we here in Nebraska, we call them SMART goals, the performance management goals, within their work area. The green belts will help review data trends, and they'll help just deliver honest and open feedback with the supervisor about potential team opportunities based on the data that's showing within the huddle. So there's three components of a huddle. We've got swim lanes. Swim lanes are really the project movement, what's going on within the lane. And then we've got QDIP boards. Those are the metric evaluations. And then we have team time. Team time is really where you set the tone, touch base with your team members, and review the daily activities and what else has been going on. So here's just a visual of person-based swim lane or Kanban. You might be familiar with that terminology. The five things we focus in on: project and team management, effective track status, and projects moving through the process steps. This swim lane board can help manage bottlenecks within your team members. And then lastly, just you can highlight and communicate challenges that are going on. This is more of a project-based swim lane board. On the left-hand side, instead of people, it's process steps or process milestones. And again, it does the same thing as the person-based, just moving items through the swim lane based on your metrics or your goals for that particular item. So I've mentioned QDIP board quite a few times. This is the structure we use here in the state of Nebraska. We'll talk more about what does QDIP actually mean, but here's a quick visual of what our daily huddles look like when you start to walk around our work areas. We use a control chart, a calendar, issues, and action plan. So QDIP, the Q stands for quality. We're trying to address reworks and defects. I've provided some examples of questions that we ask ourselves when we're trying to set up a goal that will hopefully help reduce the defects that are happening. So an example would be, how many permits need amendments? Okay, that's a question, but now we need to set a goal. The goal would be something like, we want to have less than five permits come through without having to be sent back. or you could set a percentage too. We want to have 100% first time complete through the permitting process. D, delivery. This is about your timeliness and how quickly we can produce something. So again, an example, how long does it take to issue a permit? That's a great question, but now we need to put a measure behind it, put a goal behind it. We want to process 20 permits within 24 hours. So that would be our goal for the day. So when we get together with our teams, this is what we're talking about the day before. The I stands for inventory. This is about addressing your backlog, your inventory, or your waiting. Example, how many permits are awaiting the initial review at the end of the day? Let's say our goal or our measure for inventory would be we want to have 0 in the queue when we leave at night. That would be our goal. That's something we can measure. And lastly, productivity. Productivity, of course, is about how much can we produce in a day. So how many permits did we issue yesterday? Let's say on average, the goal, we figured we can process 50. So we'd want to have a measure that says we can accomplish 50 per day. So Huddle Guidelines, here's some things that we've just put out there for the teams. You start and end on time. We've tried to really get people comfortable with asking questions. That's one thing we've seen is there's silos, and so we want the frontline staff to be able to open up to the middle level managers and just ask questions. That's how you learn. We ask that one conversation at a time, silent your cell phone, and just be open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. We ask that they listen actively and seek to understand the other people, respect each other. Change is necessary for improvement, so just being open to change, even if it's a little change. Having a positive attitude helps. This is a big one, no rank among the team members. We're all at the same level. And then focusing on solutions. And then lastly, just really having fun as appropriate. And that wraps up our presentation.
Awesome. Thank you guys, both of you, so much. We are going to turn to Jean again to see if there's any questions in the chat pane.
Yeah, so we've got one so far. Anybody else can throw theirs in there and I'll read it out. The first one is, who provides the Six Sigma training? Do people obtain certification at these different levels?
Great question. We have a Center of Operational Excellence team. They report to a department called Administrative Services. And so they're kind of like our corporate office. They're kind of the go-tos for training, HR, kind of at the state level. And so this team called Center of Operational Excellence provides all of this training. Actually, let me step back. The white belt is online. Yellow belt has now been sent out to the agencies. So agencies are actually delivering that training. And the green belt and up is facilitated by the Center of Operational Excellence. I do want to make mention all the material that comes to the department to help facilitate is coming out of the COE, so the Center of Operational Excellence.
Awesome, thank you.
Great, we've got one more, well, a couple more that kind of go off of that. The next one is, how long is the training, especially the mandatory ones?
The white belt, which is mandatory, is about 20 to 30 minutes online. We're just trying to get them acclimated with the state's culture. So we're just giving them the basic rundown of LSS.
Great, we got another one. Does performance measurement persist after the team completes the OCM activity? If so, in what form?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I totally understand. The OCM is the change management, right?
Yeah, so this may be a follow-up question from the previous presentation.
Yeah, if they want to reach out to me directly, we can.
That would be the data that we collect. We collect data after following it through. That's what I'm assuming.
Well, the next one is definitely for you guys. It says, where is the QDIT board located and who updates the board?
So the QDIP board is normally located within the team's work area. If for some reason the team is spread out, it's normally located where the supervisor is. The person who updates it, again, normally it's the supervisor, but anybody can really update the board. If they've went through training or have an understanding of it, anybody can update the board.
Great, that's all we got in the chat pane right now. If people want to unmute their microphones and ask questions, we can do that too.
Hey, Lindsay and Shane, this is Gary here at CDOT. Thanks again, terrific presentation. Shane, I really love the right-of-way improvement. It sounds like you have a few other right-of-way improvements also going on there. Is that kind of your one of your leading edge groups there, wanting to make progress?
Yeah, I mean, the sponsor, the director of the right-of-way is very forward-thinking. Or the division head, I'm sorry, the division head is very, very forward-thinking. And a lot of the projects that we have, once we completed that Kaizen that I just showed you, there's a lot of other things that came to light, and he really got excited about changing some other things, trying to make it better, that are in the works that we're still looking at and working on. But he's certainly not the only one here that is beginning to catch that vision of how we can make things better and improve it. It seems common sense to a lot of the people when we're in the middle of it. It's like, this just makes sense. But no one had taken the time to really drill down and take a look at it and say, hey, this can be better. So it's catching on. I'm really excited about how much it is catching on throughout the entire DOT.
Very cool.
All right, thanks, Shane. I actually have a follow-up question too, if that's allowed, Shay.
Yeah, go for it.
I love your use of stand-up and huddle boards. Is that prevalent throughout NDOT, or there's penetration of 20%, 30%? Is that everywhere, or are you still working on that?
I would say we're just starting to kick this off. The concept of daily huddles in the QDIP board is a statewide enterprise implementation, and so there's probably, I think, over 300 or 400 huddles across the agencies. We've got about 30 here at NDOT that are pretty active, and we aren't forcing them. We're trying to make sure we find value within the team. Because there's a lot of times if you force something, the team doesn't buy into it. So we're just rolling, I would say, with daily huddles here.
Okay, thank you.
And then if anyone else has any questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself or send it in the chat. But I think we're going to move on to our open discussion. So for that,
I have one more question.
Oh, yeah,
this is Kajanda from the state of Illinois. And I was just wondering, who leads those daily huddles? Is it the leader, or do they allow each person within the group to lead at some point? How does that work?
We have set it up that it's actually open to just about anyone can lead. In fact, we encourage leadership to be shared. So it can be led by the supervisor. And some of that is just by default because they have the information. They're the ones who are actually tracking the numbers for the entire team. But the huddles are set up in such a way that it's simple enough that anyone can lead it. Anyone who's there can know, okay, we're going to talk about this metric, and does anyone have any information on here, and then this metric, and then this metric, and then kind of move down the line, just to kind of make it very open.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you for unmuting yourself and asking that question. So now we're going to open it up to any kind of questions at all, or even just discussions amongst the group. Anyone online right now? So this is an opportunity for you to share your successes, ask additional questions, or even bring up new topics. And again, you can submit them through the chat pane if you don't want to unmute yourself.
Hi, folks. This is Gary here in Colorado at CDOT. Across state government, we're continuing to involve continuous improvement and getting much more engaged with Agile, which I always think of as a close sibling to Lean. But I'm wondering, are there other states that have some experience with taking an Agile approach, either to IT projects or to other projects, as opposed to traditional waterfall approach on IT projects or something else? Just wondering if there's anybody else online that has some experience with Agile. I was experienced with Agile in other employers. We haven't been doing much with Agile in the state until just this year, and so any lessons learned would be great. So open question about Agile. All right, well, maybe not, but if you do think of something, go ahead and jump in or through the chat pane. I think we've got another question coming in through chat, Jean.
Yeah, we got a couple on the chat pane. Let me find it. So this is a question for Shane. Do you have tools that track your return on investment, and how long do you track them for?
That's a good one.
Hey,
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Just
Am I
wanted to make
unmuted
sure that
now?
you saw it. Yeah, you're unmuted now.
Okay, so I need to start over again because I was
Yeah, I'm
halfway
so sorry. Yeah.
All right. We have a ROI spreadsheet that the COE has developed. Took a couple of years to really fine tune it. That is flexible enough to can be used just about by any agency that's doing process improvement. So I use that to be able to track the ROI and the savings that we have, the return on investment. What I would do with that is every month I will track a project for a year, and so every month I'll go back to the process owner and we'll talk about the metrics that we have changed that have resulted in time savings. Hey, how many, in regard to, like, say for the permit, we found out that the changes made gave us a savings for each permit of 5 hours and 25 minutes. So it's, we can just do really simple math just by going back to the process owner, going at the end of the month saying, okay, how many permits do we go through? Of those, did they follow the new process? If they did, great. That's what we can use and say whatever that number is times the hours that we saved. And we add that to, so it's more for us, a lot of the ROI is the soft savings. There are projects that we've done that result in hard savings and actual cash, but the bulk of what we are finding so far is just in process hours. So that's kind of the soft savings. How many hours are we saving for each process that we're each month? And then like I said, we follow that for a year.
Great, thanks, Shane. This is an open question to everybody. Chloe says, hello from the UK. Hi, way over there. Does anybody have examples of leadership training or approaches to training leaders that they would be able to share? They're looking for different examples to share with their supply chain.
Hey, Chloe, great to have Highways England crowd online. We have some leader standard work training. You may already have something like that, but and we've been using that kind of division by division. Pretty good stuff. Pretty basic stuff, including huddles and visual management. But we'd be able to share that.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, we have another one. Has anyone set up a published live feed dashboard showing program output metrics, i.e. dollars saved, time saved, etc.? And he says, please share the return on investment tool as well. Going back to Gary's question, we have a response to that. Nigel says that they use the Project Management Institute in their Agile practice guide that classifies Agile as a subset of Lean.
Nigel, appreciate that. I always appreciate the things coming from Lean Construction. So yeah, that's good. That's good. We'll take a look at that.
We've got a couple other things in the chat pane. Over at MassDOT, they have the same Agile project management stuff, and Brianne says that they love leadership training as well.
And willing to share, perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
with
Yeah,
our friends
yeah.
in England?
Yeah.
All right.
And just as a reminder, we do have a few open questions out there now. So the one about Agile, as well as the one about leadership. Which I think, is there any other ones?
So Abari says, we have created many dashboards at MassDOT to share program performance outcome. Some of our dashboards are shared with the public.
Nice.
So thank you for that contribution. And just a reminder, you can also just share successes, any kind of success stories. Always kind of fun to hear, a little inspirational to keep going in our work.
We've also got another question for Shane coming in. I'm going to let Brianne finish typing, and then I'll read it out.
You're going to go ahead and unmute Shane for that.
All right, I'm excited. Let's have it.
The suspense is building over here. Okay. So Brianne says 65 out of the 68 process steps in the permit process were non-value add. How did the discussion go around getting to that number?
That's an interesting question, because one of the things that we really look at from process improvement is identifying those non-value add and those value add steps. So it's embedded in our methodology to, first of all, identify what waste is. And we use an acronym called downtime, which looks at defects, overproduction, wait time, non-utilized talent. You may have heard other acronyms for just identifying MUDA. as far as, in the lean methodology. So we will identify what waste is, and then from there, we have certain questions that we ask to be able to identify what value add is. And value add is, like I mentioned before, value add is a lens to look at the process, or to be able to look at the process through the lens of the customer. So first of all, we have to identify what the customer is, and what the product is. What is the end result that we're shooting for? And then we just ask some questions. We have some very simple questions. Does this step transform or change the product? If so, is the customer willing to pay for it? And sometimes you have to add some kind of monetary value to that, even if it's arbitrary. And is the step done correctly the first time? And if you can continue, if you say yes to all of those, that's typically a value add. And this is somewhat subjective to the team, but my job as a facilitator is to kind of poke and prod and ask and to really help them dive into that. What we're finding is oftentimes of a process, only 10% of the steps are actually value add. That doesn't mean that those steps shouldn't be there. It just means those steps may just move the process along, but not necessarily be value added to the end result.
All right, Brianna has some more to add on that. She says, so a lot of the time in discussion we have, even with groups we train in waste and what's value add and non-value add, we still have difficulty in conversations with team members holding on to process steps that are non-value add. And a lot of the time, the default is identifying steps as business non-value add steps.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Can totally relate to that. So it takes a little bit of work on our part as facilitators to bring the team to be able to understand what value add and what non-value add. For us, the term business value add is simply, it's very narrow in if it's legislative or some kind of rules and regs that we can't get around. If it's in, our legislation, then that's going to be a business value add. And you can use lots of different analogies to try to build that, whether that be a really simple analogy of, okay, we're all going to lunch. Who's the customer? Your customer is your stomach. What's the product? We're going to get them, to feed it. What are the steps to this process? And, they just walk through all of those steps. And then we ask those three questions. What does this step change the process or product? Is the customer willing to pay for it? And is it done right the first time? And once you kind of walk them through all of that, once you get them to be able to identify waste, then they're a lot more likely to come on board and understand value add, business value add, at least for us. So part of that is I guess a large portion of that is how we can facilitate the team to understand what that means. And we have a couple different tools that we use to really get them to see that. And in the end, for us, it is, like I said, it is subjective. So we're not going to really fight them on it unless they just are unwilling to see things and unwilling to let go of that. But if you can just couch it in the way, or I've found if I can couch it in the way of this is just through the lens of the customer, not the subject matter expert, not, the DOT necessarily, but the customer for this end product. And it helps them to be able to hold a little more loosely to the process.
Thanks for that, Shane. I like that metaphor a lot. I'm going to remember that one. Is there another one from the chat?
Yeah. So Kajanda says that somebody asked about sharing ROI tools that they use. She says that in the state of Illinois, they use a SharePoint site where all the agencies list their project output metrics, such as dollars and time saved.
Mhm.
Okay, Brianne has one more comment for Shane. She says that they restrict BNVA to legislative and policy, as well as they say that policy can change too, but it takes quite a bit of time for them to challenge the BNVA steps. Sometimes it takes months.
Yeah, we understand that as well. And what we will do when we're talking about this is we'll say that any of those changes, we definitely want to look at those, but any of those changes to legislation and policy go on to what we call the parking lot. And those are things that I can put legs to later. We have people in place here at the DOT and at Center for Operational Excellence that specialize in looking at those things. So the team may identify some of those business non-value added steps, and then we can just identify them. We'll just leave them where they are. I'll take those with me when I go and talk to the people that have the power to make those changes, those suggestions.
We'll give it one more minute or so in case anyone wants to unmute and bring up any new topics or anything like that. And then we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Alrighty, well, thank everyone for your participation today. It's been really great. I've enjoyed this discussion. I did want to go ahead and say that if you would like to be a future presenter, maybe in our next webinar, which will be in October, to go ahead and reach out to the next producer, which is going to be Courtney. Courtney is in the room today too, so you can go ahead and message her. But yeah, so just let us know.
And Jay, before we go on to the next one, I want to thank everybody here that helps produce that the session. And in particular, I want to say fond farewell to both Shay and Tess, who are in the room, two of our intrepid interns. They are moving on to permanent jobs. We're sad to see them go and very happy to see them launch into their permanent jobs in the next phase of their career. So thank you both.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, I just want to say thank you to all of the interns here that made this possible and make it possible every month that we do these. And especially to Gary Van Such for really leading this effort to keep these webinars going. So thank you. And with that, we are going to go ahead and log off. So thank you everyone who participated and logged in today. Have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.